the Ukip leadership hustings. This has been a phenomenal process, an opportunity for members to come together and express their views on the new direction of Ukip. Look, I think, as somebody who's not a Ukip member, I think there is no political party that has made a greater contribution to the constitutional development of this country. Brexit would not have taken place without Ukip, but obviously, once Brexit was partially achieved, Ukip started to struggle for its role in the world. I think that's a fair comment to make. And I think now this is an opportunity to re-envisage what Ukip is going to be. We've got two excellent candidates in Bill Etheridge and Lois Perry. Look, I believe that you know them already. And so what we're going to do is ask each of them to speak just for a couple of minutes. And then we're just going to go into some questions and talk about all of the issues that are facing this country and this party. My hope at the end of this, as somebody who is not a voter in this election, is that you will have a greater understanding of which way the party should go. There are two different visions. They're not hugely different visions because this is one political party, but I think it is important to decide which direction of travel Ukip goes on, because whilst Ukip is small, it is very much perfectly formed and has done a great deal for this country.
Bill.
Yeah. The jokes are starting already. So, look, without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Bill Etheridge.
Hey.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and as Lois says, perfectly formed, but maybe not so small. This is going to be an unusual hustings in as much as we do tend to agree on a lot, because why shouldn't we? We're in the same party. And that's one of the things that Ukip has made mistakes on in the past. We've attacked each other more ferociously than we've attacked the people we should actually be going after. That is gone. This is a new beginning, a whole new start for the party and for the movement of freedom in this country. I represent, perhaps a little more than Lois, a link with the glorious past. I used to be an MEP. I first joined the party back in 2010, but I'm not that old before we start. I'm not that old. And this tie is the Cranks and Gadflies tie that was awarded in tribute to Michael Howard when he referred to us as Cranks and Gadflies all those years ago. So, yes, the past was great. I played a part, I was a councillor, I was an MEP. But the future is far more important. We thought we'd won a victory with winning the Brexit referendum. It was a hollow victory, ladies and gentlemen. And this is why I, today, will be addressing my comments not just to the people in the room and to the Ukip members who will be watching, but to the broader public. Because I want you to understand the new meaning of this party. A few years ago, during lockdown, when we were told we could only go outside and exercise for half an hour, well, there's nothing more guaranteed to make me go out for longer when someone's saying you can't. So I got some great exercise. It was brilliant. It's the most fit I've been in years. And I went on a very long walk, and I went past the GP's surgery, and I saw an Indian lady hammering on the door of the GP surgery, crying, weeping. I went up to her and asked her what's wrong. She said, I think I'm having a heart attack. Last night, I went to the hospital. They told me to go. It's a panic attack. Go and see your GP. She couldn't get a GP's appointment. She was hammering on that GP surgery door. They opened it a crack, and masks covering their faces stood a metre back, as if she had bubonic plague. They told her she couldn't come in. This lady was having palpitations. Now, panic attacks were not that unusual during lockdown, because it's an unpleasant and unusual state of mind for humans to be imprisoned in that way, and to be told 24/7, you're all going to die because someone's going to cough. Reality of what happened in that time is that oppression was tested on the British people for the first time, and they were amazed at how successful it was.
Yes.
It's given power to their elbow. They're now going to use it for climate change issues. They're going to use it for everything they seek to do, because they've seen, if you frighten us, we may just comply. Well, ladies and gentlemen, watching at home, if you believe that that was wrong, if you want a party that will not only stand up for the people who have been coerced and forced into having these jabs and are now suffering as a result, will stand up for them, for the vaccine injured. You want a party that will fight tooth and nail against further oppression and lockdowns. You want a party that will stand against corporate powers treating us like dirt and stand for our individual rights. This is going to be your party going forward. And we're going to hear a lot about climate change. Well, the climate lately has been horribly oppressive. The climate lately has been keeping us down. I want us to be the party of climate change. We're going to change the political climate. When you've got a period of oppressive weather, what do you need? You need a good storm. You need a good storm to change things. And after the storm, you breathe the fresh, clean air of freedom. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are the storm bringers. And if you are looking to oppress the British people or anyone else, thunder and lightning is coming your way, because we will no longer accept the behaviour of the ruling elites, of the World Economic Forum laying down rules for our puppet politicians to follow. We will address them at every stage of ourselves in the intellectual, political and argument at every level. And I urge you, if you're watching and you have some interest in the issues that I've raised today, join UKIP or listen to more of what we've got to say. Whoever's the leader, whoever leads us, this is the only route. We are not a failing tribute act like the Reform Party. We are not owned by corporations and the establishment, by the big parties that take it in turns to swap power. We, the people, represent you, the people. Thank you.
Well, Bill, thank you so much. And obviously, we're going to talk about what Bill said in a couple of moments, but we're first going to get Lois Perry's contribution. Lois.
Ladies,
I think we can give you a round of applause.
Thank you so much.
It's the Medal of Nod.
Thank you for saying that. Ladies and gentlemen, the last time I spoke at a Hustings, a member of the audience came up to me and said, Lois, you were absolutely superfluous. So hopefully I'm going to do a bit better today. My name is Lois Perry, and if the truth be known, I really wish that I wasn't having to stand here campaigning for the leadership today. It shouldn't have been necessary. UKIP achieved its principal objective, a claim few political parties can make, and it forced the hand of the party in power at the time, David Cameron's so-called Conservative Party, to hold a referendum on whether Britain should leave or remain in the European Union. Not only did we win that argument, but we won the battle itself to extract ourselves. But disappointingly, though, we still haven't won the war. We have been let down totally by our weak political leadership, a leadership that blames absolutely everybody else, a woke civil service, but ultimately the blame lies with those who clamour to take back control, but they never had the balls to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, you are looking at a woman with balls. Now, I know they say that at every party conference nowadays, but that's because they're trying to be woke, gender type people. But I only have one agenda, and that is to make Britain great again. Let me tell you about my agenda and how we will achieve it. We are the United Kingdom Independence Party. That means we believe in independence, not just from Europe, but in everything that we should be a strong, independent state. Since the end of Thatcher and the onset of Blair, there's been a massive dependency culture, a victim culture, a woke culture in this country. We blame absolutely everybody else for our failings. This has got to stop. Before that serious bout of national flu, COVID, there were around 3 million people claiming benefits, but now it's not far off double. This can't continue. We need to shake ourselves out of this stupor. This country will never succeed if people don't put in the effort. The main reason why small businesses give up the will to live is because the business owners get absolutely sick to death of pointless regulations. We should have dealt with this when we come out of the EU, but we haven't dealt with it because the civil service are basically proxies to the European Union. They've been so used to being told what to do. Now they've actually got the opportunity to actually, implement government policies. They don't want to. One of the key opportunities for those of you who know me, the lucky ones, you will know that for the last few years, I have been campaigning vigorously against our completely deranged net policy through my organisation, Car 96. And I believe that this is one of the most important issues of our day. And what I've been campaigning for aligns perfectly with UKIP objectives. I believe that UKIP should be the party of energy independence. I believe we should be fracking, and I believe we should be reducing our dependence on all of these countries. If we could be sanctioning the Middle East at the moment, like we have done with Russia, then we could end the situation in Iran straight away. But we can't, because we're totally dependent on their oil and gas. UKIP has always been concerned about immigration into the UK. And whilst these concerns were often unjustly described as being xenophobic or even racist, more people are coming out of the woodwork now. This isn't about the colour of your skin. This isn't about religion. This is about values, whether you share our British values. And I think we're seeing with all these hate marches, these pro-Hamas marches every Saturday, there are a large amount of people who do not share our values. We need to do something about that. We should do away with every diversity target to ensure the best man or woman, or no, that's just man or woman, gets the job. The ridiculous acronym BAME needs to be consigned to the dustbin of history. Game over. Brexit showed the politicians that the British people were fed up with the old way of doing things. And despite all the warnings, they were prepared to take a chance on change. Big, bold change. But they never got it. For the last 12 years, the Lib Dems have become an irrelevance. Labour have no new ideas, and the Tories have literally been asleep at the wheel. Well, I say to Rishi Sunak, UKIP if you want to, and to everyone else, I say UKIP because you need to. Thank you very much.
So clearly, these two candidates, it seems to me, are from quite different backgrounds, in that one of them is from a lobbying organisation and the other is a former MEP. I just wanted to ask you first, Bill, about the democratic deficit, because both of you have talked really about this central concept, which I think is important, which is we genuinely thought the only problem was the EU. Now, that might not be that you two did, but I feel that I felt that way. And that when we left the EU, that would be the end of all this. But actually, I just wonder, how can we start to break down the infrastructure that is so dangerous to our democracy, whether that be the World Economic Forum, whether that be the BBC, whether that be the civil service, whether that be wokery, all of those institutions which now seem to be so against the idea of us having democratic choice?
Well, before I became an MEP, I used to work in the steel industry. I was doing that for 20 years. So politics to me was fairly new when I got involved in it. And I was astonished by the levels of complexity of governance. And it soon became very clear to me that actually leaving the EU was not the goal. The EU is just the first door that you've got to smash down before you can then start breaking down the state and its control in your own country. It's an obvious target because it's a big state, it's a supranational organisation. But once you're through that, what we should have done and we didn't was to continue to break down the barriers of the state within our own country. I speak as a libertarian at heart. I want individual freedom. I want people to be free to live as they wish, do as they wish, keep their money and not have it squandered in taxes. And we cannot do that with the current system.
Before I go to Lois, why is our national parliament so irrelevant to national debate?
Because it's bought. It's bought. With anything, and this is a theme that I've referred to in other hustings and other interviews, follow the money. When you've got these large political parties, they are bought by their donors, and they will follow what they do. There are very few very few, but some honourable exceptions to the rule of MPs, some people will stand up.
And it's great to see Andrew in the audience today, Andrew Bridget, who I have to say, I think is one of the greatest parliamentarians of our age. Simply because he was somebody who was willing to stand up and do his actual job, which I think has been a real shock.
Yeah. Well, I was being subtle, but yeah, fair enough.
No,
Bill, Andre doesn't do subtle.
Bill, subtlety is not Andrew's thing.
No, fair enough.
But look, Lois, I want to ask you, you know, we've talked about all of these elephants in the room, and actually, normally elephants in the room is a phrase you'd use about one big issue. But actually, there's loads of them, aren't there? There's control from climate change. There's control by the World Economic Forum. There's the element of wokery. I mean, you know, I sit there and wonder who actually is driving all the wokery, and nobody seems to know. Everybody points at somebody else. Which is the big issue we need to tackle first within all of these?
Well, I think that there are lots of vested interests around the world, whether that be massive business, the globalists, or whatever, who are deliberately trying to antagonise and cause divisions in Western society. I mean, we know for a fact, it was reported quite widely, that Russia was funding the anti-fracking campaign. You know, why would they be doing that? Because they want us to buy their oil and gas. They know fracking's safe. Fracking happens in America all the time, the most litigious place on earth. If there was a problem with fracking, we would know about it in America.
Lois, I look at this, and the thing that makes my blood boil is that you have all of these government departments run by all of these agencies and all of these committees. And the problem is they've appointed the greatest extremists in every particular subject field to be on these quangos. So as an example, the people who are running the climate change policy are all directors of crazy wind farm companies. And so corrupt. And so we end in a position where our whole government is not government by committee, it's government by extremists in a particular field. How can we start to take back our country?
Well, I mean, basically, we need to make sure, for example, you know, maybe do a diversity target on right-wingers and left-wingers in these institutions, because otherwise you have the situation that Liz Truss so eloquently described recently at the PopCon thing that I went to, where it doesn't matter which political party is in power, because they don't have any say over policy, or they can have a say over policy, but the guys and girls who are trying to implement, or who are implementing it, just ignore it. And they can, because, you know, as I said, the civil service is completely woke, and you've got these quangos that have so much power, they've effectively replaced the government departments and the ministries.
It seems to me that the role of a member of parliament is to go back to their constituency and apologise for government policy, and to try and persuade people to accept government policy rather than actually make it.
But as Bill just said, they're not actually, there's other people in charge. They're almost paid minions. I mean, I remember when I went to Parliament when I was 12 years old, my granddad was in the Strangers Gallery, and I was young, but I remember looking down and thinking, wow, there's some really impressive guys here, you know, really impressive big beasts, they used to call them, didn't they? And oh my God, have you seen, I went to PMQs recently with a very good friend of mine. It's like light and day from when I was 12 years old. And I'm sure it's not just because I was a kid. They're just not impressive. No. They're there to do as they're told, apart from Andrew. You know, what are we going to, we need to sort our MPs out. I think they've been so used to being told what to do by Europe. And you said this before on your show, that we've got just a completely inept political class who are just pushing buttons and voting things through.
So I think, and I'm going to put this to both of you, and please do chip in. Clearly, both of you agree on the following proposition, that this isn't about major political parties. There needs to be, whether you call it a wrecking ball, whether you call it Whirlwind for Change, whether you call it independent thinkers, UKIP needs to be that. How best to take that forward, Bill?
The way to take it forward is to, with no fear whatsoever, take them on at every single step, everywhere you can take them on.
But is that electorally, or is it in the media?
Every step. Public meetings, stand for elections, put the effort into your local areas. If you get the chance to go on the media, go onto the media and battle hard and fight hard, and take on the battle of ideas. No one has fought the battle of ideas for years and years. We used to have Conservatives arguing for a broadly capitalist system and Labour for a broadly socialist. Now they're all arguing for social democracy. Yeah. Nobody is arguing the proposition for freedom, and that's where we come in. It's not just our energy and passion and vigour, it's the fact that we will be arguing intellectually a different political stance to anybody else, and that can be exciting.
Lois, I would... sorry. Lois, I make it my policy not to slag off fellow right-wingers, but it seems to me that there are some people who've broken away from the Conservative Party who really their problem with the Conservative Party is personality rather than political. And it strikes me that UKIP has to be a party that is fighting for the right policies rather than anything else. And so that makes you perhaps a little more authentic.
Well, yeah, and it's very interesting. You know, Liz Truss, one of the questions on that was the vote that was today was this, she said she had no longer had any friends in the Conservative Party, and she was the only Conservative in the room, which is ironic because she used to be a Lib Dem, and now she's a proper Conservative, and all the Conservatives are actually Lib Dems. So, you know, she is the only Conservative in the room. But yeah, I mean, UKIP is essential because, you know, I think you think that I'm totally in bed with reform, right? I've
never said such a thing.
Not literally. But, you know, I actually feel...
That would be hideous.
The mind boggles.
Yeah, it really would, yeah. But no, I feel that we should just be open to not cutting off anything in the future. That was all I meant.
But Lois, in that case...
But we need to challenge reform because as they get more power, and they'll go more towards the centre, they'll get more frightened of losing it because as soon as boys or girls get power, they want to hang on to it and they'll start behaving. And that makes UKIP even more important because we can say the things they won't say, you know? But
there's always going to be a huge debate in any small political party with what partnerships they come up with. And I think that is clearly a legitimate thing. But the worry here is that I think, and I say this as a commentator and not because I'm not a UKIP member, it seems to me they came to a stage at UKIP where there was a debate between, is this a pressure group or is this a political party that wants to win elections? And I don't know which of those you have to be, and I don't make any judgment on it. But what's your view on that, Lois?
Well, UKIP has a wonderful history and it's going to have a wonderful future. We have proved that we are literally successful, and you had a lot to do with that, you know, as did Nigel Farage, love him or hate him. So, you know, we are different to Reform in that they're not a normal political party and they don't have members and they don't have, you know, all of the things that we have. So that's our unique selling point. That's what we can do. That's how we can present ourselves. You can become a member, you can vote, you can have a say. People's Party, 100%. There
is one other point I want to ask about on party tactics, because obviously the majority of people watching this are going to be members of UKIP and are going to want to know about the future. For those of you that aren't members of UKIP, we're going to come on to some of the policies and discuss that with the candidates. But I think one of the problems that UKIP had in the past was that they had one person who was unbelievably famous. And actually, as somebody who works in television, I do accept that it's very, very difficult when you get a press request for, say, a Nigel Farage character to then try and promote somebody else. What are both of you going to do, and I'll start with you, Lois, to ensure that it doesn't just become a one-person party? Because that has... whilst having Nigel was hugely beneficial to UKIP, I think it did damage its long-term viability.
Is there any particular reason why you're asking me the question? Do you think I might hog the limelight, Andre? And I don't know what could have possibly given you that impression.
Well, he'd be bigger on TV, I reckon.
Absolutely.
No, I think it's essential that, you know, if you have spokespeople that you've nominated, that you push them just as much. But you can't get away from the fact that, as you say, like Nigel or whatever, there are people that have that ability to communicate, and that's why they're the leader. You know, because normal people associate with them and identify with them. And I'm not, you know, actually I'm going to blow my own trumpet. That's the point of me being here, isn't it? You know, I do think that I have the ability to people and they identify with me. And I think UKIP, I've got to work. I've got quite an interesting background. I've got an entrepreneurial side to my family, quite upper middle class. although self-made, and then I've got an extremely naughty side of my family, which is my dad's side, and I see all the things that people talk about. I see people being on benefits, people having babies so that they don't have to work. I've seen it all. I've got literally a gene pool at war with itself constantly, and I think that gives me an ability to for people.
I've been to that nightclub as well.
I do think it gives me quite a good grounding.
So Bill, obviously you're going to come to this with a different perspective, simply because you were one of the people in the European Parliament who had a system rigged against you. Really made it very difficult for you to put your best foot forward. How do you ensure that UKIP has a multifaceted team?
Well, for a start, it never stopped me. And as anyone who watched in those times will know, it never stopped me. The point of the matter is UKIP has some up-and-coming stars within it, has some people within it who are very, very capable, has some people in it who've always been very capable, and they've been starved of the limelight. Now, what happens when you get one person, and Nigel, wonderful for a period of time, as the leader of UKIP, was hogging the limelight, and he loves it. Fair play to him. He dines out on it, superb. But it left no opportunity for anyone else. Under my leadership, I will, of course, take on the heavy, but I will make sure that everyone is promoted through to get their opportunity. And we talk about policies as well that was just discussed. The policies in UKIP are currently undergoing review. There's a policy committee. We have a policy manifesto that is contributed to by the people within the party. Now, that is the difference between us. Now, I don't think you're in bed with the whole of the Reform Party, and I've never said that, or even any of them, even any of them. However, I do think that one of the big differences between us, and me and Lois agree on so much, it's unbelievable. But on this one thing, there is a difference, because UKIP is a political party. We are here to win seats. No, let me finish. We are here to win seats and to win representation. We are not a pressure group. And if we go around saying, oh, well, Reform, some great people, Nigel, etc., some great people, what's the point of UKIP? We are different. We are the party of the people, not a company designed to give media attention to a handful of very rich men playing politics at the top.
Well, yeah. So Bill, this is something that we talked about off camera, but I do want to mention it to you because it seemed to me as an outsider that the major problem obviously was not with Nigel Farage, and this is not an opportunity to either venerate him or slag him off. There is a future for this political party. But Nigel believed fundamentally that UKIP's role was to force the Conservatives to be more conservative. And then I think there was a period of time when that was fantastic. I mean, I remember, in fact, I'll tell you this story. I worked for the Member of Parliament for Morecambe, who had a majority of 866, and he was in favour of the referendum, but he wasn't going to vote for it. And Nigel Farage moved the regional headquarters of UKIP into our building. And I saw Nigel and said, how can you do this to us? And he said, because if I don't bully Conservative MPs, none of this will happen. They love their power more than they love the EU. That's probably not true in the Lib Dems and Labour, but it is true in the Conservatives. Now, look, there was a role for that. And I suppose it's always fascinated me as to the extent to which you engage with other political parties to bully them and the extent to which you don't care what they think.
We are a standalone political party. I don't care what other political parties do, say, or think. I was based in the Midlands doing most of my campaigning and worked up in the north as well. We were taking on Labour. Yeah. Nigel's had his tactics, and he still employs them now with Reform, where they're trying to get what they want out of the Conservatives. We don't give a damn about that. The most of the UKIP membership and the people who vote for UKIP and will vote again for UKIP want us because they want what we offer, which is distinctly different. No backroom deals, no grubby little handshake, no smoke-filled rooms. We will not do.
That's not possible, is it? Really?
Well, no, yeah. Well, I wish it were, but we will not do deals. Exactly.
Yeah, this is where we differ.
I do not accept the need for doing these kind of deals, particularly with people like Reform, because if you do a deal with the devil, you will get stung by it. And that is exactly what they are. They are the people at the top of that party are not trustworthy, and their aim is to destroy us.
What about
hang on a second, before we go to Lois, I do want to ask this question because I think this is important. What about something like any sort of partnership, where, as an example, presumably you wouldn't run against certain DUP MPs and you might have a joint ticket? Would that be something you consider?
These are issues that the leader cannot decide alone.
Okay.
Because they go to the NEC and there's input from the rest of the party. My strong advice to the party is that we are seen an individual, standalone party that fights in as many seats as we think we can win, where we've got good activists, and we don't do deals. Look at what happened to the Lib Dems. We don't do deals with anyone. We go forward as UKIP, and then you vote UKIP, you get UKIP. Okay.
Lois, I won't ask you a question. I'll just ask you to respond to all of that.
Well, I mean, yeah. So I believe that we need to assess each seat under my leadership on whether the candidate actually has our values or not. So, for example, if you've got a Conservative MP that stood up against lockdown, that is very anti-Europe, that is very anti-wokery, why on earth would we waste our time and money, and what would be the ideological point standing a candidate against them? So I would look at each seat on a case-by-case basis and make an assessment on whether we should stand somebody against them. What on earth would be the point of wasting our time and resources when the person who might be getting back in or in for the first time espouses our values? I don't get it. I think that's very short-sighted.
If they espouse our values, we can give them a UKIP membership form and they can join us.
That's unlikely, though. It's good rhetoric, but it's pointless. I'm sorry.
If they agree with us so much, they should be part of UKIP. If they are a part of another party with different policies.
If there was a sitting Tory MP that shared our values and was a force for good, just on a point of principle, you would stand a candidate against him.
Does that Tory MP have the whip? Because if they do, they will vote with what Sunak and co at the top say, and that's not our values.
Not necessarily.
Well, of course. So it's not our values. If they share our values and beliefs, because I agree with you, we shouldn't get rid of people who share our values and beliefs. What we should do, no, we should say to them, come and join us, because be true to yourself and true to the people. Stand for a party that actually speaks for what you believe in.
You're talking like a party that ideologically, I respect you 100% of what you're saying, but there's no experience or pragmatism to what you're saying in terms of us ever having any power or any cooperation or any alliances and having any real influence ever.
You don't think we'll ever have any power or influence?
No, not if you go down the line that you're talking. No, I really don't. I think because we do need to work together. It is a first past the post system. If we do get a few MPs, then we will need to have some sort of coalition or pacts with people. That's the very nature of politics. And the Lib Dems, I'm sorry, but that was completely disingenuous, you talking about the Lib Dems alliance with the Tories, because they're completely ideologically opposed, whereas we would be talking, or I would be talking, about people that share our values on the right. So it's completely different.
Well, the Lib Dems and the Tories formed a government that lasted for years, so they can't be that ideologically opposed.
But that's why their membership hated them so much, because it was the Tories.
What I might do is leave it there. The only reason I want to leave it there is we've got limited time, and I think it's really clear to anybody watching and anybody in the room where each candidate lies on this issue. That Lois is in favour of talking to other political parties, and Bill is very much against it. And I think that UKIP members will want to reflect on that, and some will go with one candidate, others will go with the other. But I do want to talk a little bit about policy, because it's really, really important. And I want to start really this segment of it talking about those policies that perhaps other political parties wouldn't be willing to touch, but actually are incredibly popular in the country. The most obvious example, I'll put this to Lois, is the death penalty. And I'm not saying that UKIP should advocate the death penalty, and in a sense, I don't even mind what your personal opinion on it is, but should UKIP be willing to start looking at these unpopular in Westminster policies, but popular in the country policies?
Well, having been told by the party chairman that I needed to go through the policy document in detail over the last few weeks, this is one of the UKIP policy document manifesto. This is one of the ones that I did look at, and the UKIP's current policy is to campaign for a referendum. I would say my heart says yes, of course, for paedophiles and people like that. But when you have a situation where someone can have their life taken by the state and mistakes are made so often. You know, I can't advocate for a death penalty on a personal level.
What if you had the system that I think operates in certain states in the United States of America, where it would need to be a jury that both convicted somebody and unanimously supported the death penalty for them? So it wasn't, if you like, a decision being made by a judge.
I've seen juries be swayed by very, very good barristers. You know, I've been not personally involved in trials, but I've sat in on trials, and I've seen how they can manipulate juries, how someone being very good with a turn of phrase or someone, or even using racism or females' hatred towards other women and jealousy in some case, how they can use that to turn a jury. So no, I don't. Not when it's life and death.
Well, before I go to Bill on that subject, and sorry, just to stick on this, but it does strike me that you know, if you go back historically, a law might be "thou shalt not steal," right? And what happens is you and I go to court. You say I stole your pig, and I say, and I say you owed me 2 pence. Or then 12 jurors would decide whether that constitutes theft or it constitutes getting back the money I was owed. Very, very simple. Nowadays, piece of legislation is a thick book of loopholes. Do you think that when you talk about trials by jury being unfair on the basis of the complexity of the law, that's something UKIP should start talking about?
Well, absolutely. And as I say, sometimes they have layman juries in very complex financial trials, for example. So they're completely led by the judge. And so look, trial by jury is fantastic. 12 of our peers, Magna Carta, all of that, but not when it's life and death.
Yeah. Okay. But I've got to say, but the reason I raised that issue is I think this confetti of legislation coming out of Parliament, first of all, makes legislative scrutiny impossible, but secondly, means that part of this complexity of government, which is a democratic problem, is made worse. And you can comment on that, but I do want to return to the question that I put to Lois.
I'll be succinct. It's always been our policy to have a referendum on the tea. I support that policy. Were there a referendum, I would campaign vigorously for the return of the death penalty. And I can honestly say that I think the right thing to do in some cases, not on an industrial scale, but certainly for it to be an option, is people like the killers of Lee Rigby should be hanging from noose, not using taxpayers' money in our prisons.
And that really brings me on to an important issue, and it's going to be an important issue for us. I am perfectly in favour of immigration, as I'm sure most people are, when it's appropriate and when it's the right people for the right jobs, when there's no skills in the UK. We have now started to use immigration as a way to change this country. What are we going to do about it, Bill?
Immigration in itself can't be something that we can argue about if we know anything about our family trees. My great-grandmother was Irish, and I'm sure most of us could say something like that. However, mass immigration, uncontrolled, all settling into the same area, leads us on to multiculturalism. And multiculturalism does not work. No. There should be one culture in the United Kingdom, that is the British culture, and you cannot enforce a British culture and its values when you've got pockets of people who live in a different way. So immigration, I think most people would agree, has to be controlled. How we go about it, there are different ways. At the moment, in the past, we've subscribed to the point system. There are other ways that we're looking at in the policy document about perhaps doing it in a slightly different way. The point is it must be radically controlled. Only people coming into this country who ascribe to our values and who offer something to this country. Not just people randomly coming because it might be a nicer place to live. Of course, it's winning first prize in the lot of life to be British. Of course, and we're very fortunate. And I don't blame anyone for wanting to come here, but we have to be sensible. Just say there's only so much room in the house.
But just to be specific, Bill, on that, if I wanted to employ a particular type of expert, say a medical expert or a computer expert or something where there is a lack of skills in the UK, you would say, and I'm not being disparaging to this, I just want to know the answer, you would say, if the candidate themselves was not somebody whose views were compatible with British culture, even though there was a skills deficiency, you would refuse them.
if they're going to go out and tell people how to live and start imposing their values, religion, faith, culture on other people, I don't care how good at computers they are, they can sling their hook.
That's a reasonable point. Lois, just slightly different on the immigration issue. I mean, I think we are all pretty shocked that the Royal Navy's principal job in the Channel now appears to be assisting in an invasion of the country by immigrants. How we got there, I don't know. But what are we going to do about the fact that actually people who legally come to the country is also clearly out of control as well, in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands?
Well, yeah. Can I just address the first point and then come to the second point? I don't believe that the people that are coming over are not. I think it's part of a plan. I think it's been done at the highest level of the civil service with big business, and I believe they're being brought in on purpose to fill certain jobs, delivery drivers, Uber drivers, and you even have somebody that you know who basically confirmed that because he used to be involved in it and made hundreds of millions of pounds out of it.
Yes.
You know that is going on. So all this stuff about boats and the Navy and all of that is great, but it's pointless because the deal has been done at such a high level. That's what we need to be, and that's what I'd be saying on television.
Lois, before you go to the second point about legal immigration, I won't name the person because he's not sat here, but the friend of mine who was the largest employer of immigrant labour in Britain, he said the reason that this is taking place is because you, and that includes the people in this room and watching, and indeed me, are so addicted to being able to order something on your phone today and get it tomorrow for free. Actually, we are the problem. I think that's...
Yeah, but lower middle class people can pretend to be upper middle class. That's the long and short of it. You know, whereas you used to take 50 quid to go across London in a black cab, I can get an Uber now for 18 quid. How on earth does somebody make that pay unless they're living in a room where they might have to share a bed or something like that, which is something that we've discussed.
Something I've never done.
But, you know, in terms of legal migration, I think we've got to address the student visa thing, where somebody seems to be able to bring in their entire family, and sometimes the students are 50 years old. You know, all of those loopholes need to be massively addressed.
I had a caller on my Friday night show who made a joke, but when we dug into it, even though the comment was amusing, he said he was being entirely genuine. And the comment he made was that he was shocked about the number of gay Christians who attended his local mosque. And when we talked to him, he was being entirely serious. But immigration is changing our country, Bill, and whether it be legal or illegal immigration, we've got a problem. And on legal immigration, what would UKIP do?
Well, UKIP, I think it's the one thing that we're actually really recognised for, and most of us will agree on. We are the party that will control and stamp down on the numbers of people entering this country. We may have some different ways that we're going to go about it and look at it, but we are the party of that. That is one thing you guarantee with UKIP. And it isn't, as Lois said, it's not going to be about race. It's not going to be about religion. It's going to be about numbers. And it's going to be about what do you contribute and why are you here? And when you come here, do you want it? Your values, exactly.
And values,
and that's all it's about. And we are the party that will represent that, as we do now.
Okay, so Lois, I think we've talked on a number of occasions about international bodies and the fact that UKIP was set up. I thought, and Bill slightly corrects me on this, that it was just about the EU, but obviously that was only just the start. I think there is major concern in the country about the role of the World Economic Forum, and about this idea that wherever it is, whether it be Davos or anywhere else, whether it be the UN, that an elite of people are getting together and all agreeing on what should happen to their respective countries, and then going back to those countries and implementing it against the will of the people. What on earth are we going to do to break that cabal?
Well, the main thing is making sure that the public know about it, because, you know, if the public don't know about it, then they can't lobby their MPs and they can't have their voice heard. All of this, you remember, we were shut down during the whole COVID thing. Talk about the WHO, it was a conspiracy theory. Talk about Davos and the World Economic Forum, it was a conspiracy theory. Never mind that they were telling us exactly what they were doing on their websites. You were a nutter, you were mad. It's all a conspiracy. We've now seen that that's not true. The treaty is expected to be signed, which hands over complete power to the World Health Organization, that's run by a fake doctor, not even a proper doctor, for whether we lock down or not, for whether people have mandatory vaccinations or not. It's disgusting.
I mean, Bill, that's got to be a major concern, that the fake Dr. Tedros, actually an Ethiopian communist, rather than a medical medical
Sherlock.
Yeah, but rather than a medical practitioner. And so we now are in a position where our domestic policy is being dominated by, at least the EU had MEPs. At least there was some pretense at democracy and openness. I mean, Dr. Tedros is not even willing to admit he's not a medical doctor. That's a level you've got to.
Yeah, and of course, the whole point is these are unelected elites around the world. I mean, me and Lois are in complete agreement about this. They've got to be exposed. They've got to be shown for what they are. I mean, we had a SAGE committee. Can bring it down to a SAGE committee during lockdown that had people on it who were behavioural scientists.
Yes.
They'd had no idea about so-called viruses. So all of these committees, it's in plain sight it's going on. And our own king goes over. I don't know who elected him and asked him to go over and represented us at these things. And then we've got politicians going over. The only
Anti-one? Are you not?
I'm anti-unelected people representing the country. In
I
political
believe in
status.
king and country wholeheartedly.
Well, we better do away with Parliament then. But I actually think we should have MPs.
Sorry, I just want to check up on that. So, I mean, look, the king does have.
You're a Republican.
Give me a second. The king does have a role. Do you want the king to maintain his position, or do you support an elected head of state?
We had a queen for a great many years who did her role without showing any political favour, one way or the other. She certainly said things to politicians and gave them advice and guidance, but nobody could tell you which way she was swayed or thought on things. We currently have a king who everyone knows his politics.
You just said two completely contradictory things. You've just said you've got a problem with an unelected head of state, and then you praised the Queen.
I didn't say that.
Oh, you didn't say that?
I said I've got a problem with an unelected person representing us and giving his political views.
Oh, well, I agree.
I mean, we will move on in a second, because I do want to talk about Britain funding terrorism and concerns about the United Nations, because I think the fact that we are a funder of terrorism in the Middle East has to be a concern. But look, how on earth would we prohibit the monarch from doing the job in whatever way they see fit?
Well, the monarch is a constitutional head of state who is not supposed to, we did have things like, civil wars and beheadings of kings a few hundred years ago that stopped the monarch being an absolute authority. They are a figurehead, but legally there to do what the politicians who are elected by us tell them to do. Now, we should have elected politicians where we slightly differ from this, because we both agree with taking on these global institutions.
Oh, absolutely.
But my view is that eventually, if we do this properly and we work for the people, we will get MPs who will fight to stop this happening. And that, for me, through the electoral democratic process, is how we stand for democracy and how we fight against these supranational institutions.
Yeah, we need MPs to have power again. Yeah.
Now, look, I don't particularly want to focus on one country regarding international relations, but there is an obvious issue related to the Middle East, and that is the initial incursion into Israel and the subsequent responses of various countries. Look, I would say it's for Israel to defend itself, but at the same time, there is increasing evidence that the United Kingdom and other well-meaning countries have been financing terrorism in the Middle East through international bodies, including the UN. What's your policy on that?
Through international, including the EU as well,
Correct.
Who was sending aid to these people in Palestine and so on, and that was being siphoned directly off into terrorist activities. And when I was in the EU, we saw a little girl from Israel who was covered from head to toe. She had awful burns because she'd been trying to go to school and a terrorist had attacked the school bus, and she was burned to within an inch of her life. And we met that young lady who's still continuing her education, and God bless her, she was so brave. So all of this aid that's being sent. No one knows who's signing it off and what they're using it for,
Oh, I think
or in
we
case
do.
sometimes
Yeah.
they do. But we
Yeah.
don't know as a people.
No.
And the issue is we stop randomly giving this money out for a start. On the broader issue, which I think you'll come on to about Israel and its activities, I believe personally that the state has a right to defend itself. However, as UKIP, we are not a party that on foreign policy affairs gets involved in these matters. We get involved in what suits the United Kingdom and what goes on in other countries. We don't support sending troops, money, etc. into foreign wars, including the Ukraine.
Okay. So obviously, Lois, I mean, international terrorism funded by the United Kingdom. And once again, it's a situation in which our national parliament appeared unaware. And I believe that most MPs are crap, but genuine, which is a bit of a sad state of affairs. But you know, the national parliament was unaware, and yet international bodies that were originally crafted for us to come together have been hacked. I mean, if you look at the UN, you know, initially after the Second World War, the idea was, wouldn't it be great if all these countries came together? Of course, what we forgot was the vast majority of countries are dictatorships, and therefore, if they vote by majority, that diminishes British democracy.
Well, absolutely, and as you say, the irony is that most of the countries that are within the United Nations and get a chance to vote on UN policy and everything don't have democracy in their own countries, which is very, very strange. But we should 100% be supporting Israel. I think we should be supporting Israel in every single way that we can, because they are the last bastion between us and radical Islamism. And we have seen that it does affect our country, what's going on in Israel. You see these people that are third, fourth generation that don't share our values, marching on the streets every Saturday, intimidating people. We have to support Israel.
I think stopping the hate marches is not the same thing as supporting Israel.
Give me a second.
No,
Give me
I'm
a
saying we
second.
must support Israel.
So what I want to do, Lois, because I think it's clear that there is another disagreement on approach here, and nothing wrong with it. Under what circumstances would you send the British military in, and in what format? Because I think that there's going to be a lot of people watching this who will say that there are certain military incursions, say the Falklands, which are clearly justified, and then perhaps we were all pretty badly burnt by the Iraq situation. Under what circumstances should Britain act militarily?
Well, when you've got Iran attacking Israel through their proxies, and you've got also Iran through their proxies attacking our ships, you know, there is a point where we're going to have to say, what side are we on? Are we on the side of freedom and democracy and capitalism and women's rights and gay rights and all of that kind of stuff? Or are we on the side of radical Islamism? So there will be a point, hopefully not, where we will have to pick a side, definitely.
And now, Bill, look, I don't know you particularly well, but I imagine you're not a pacifist, so I'll just put that same question to you. Clearly, there are circumstances in which you'd use the British military. Ukraine isn't one of them, but what would be the circumstances?
I am certainly not a pacifist in any way, shape or form. I believe that life is sacred, though, and I believe that British life is particularly sacred. If we are any of our overseas territories were attacked, if any of our naval vessels were attacked, if there was a direct attack on our course and NATO obligations, I do not believe in the kind of Blair liberalism that got us drawn into Iraq and Afghanistan and things like that. That is not our fight to have.
But if you act purely in the British interest, you can define British interest in multiple ways. That could be a direct attack on citizens, which I think very few people would not seek to repel, although Sadiq Khan's probably one of them. But there's very few people who would not seek to repel.
He said that, not us. He said, if anyone, just in case the thought police are watching.
You disagree.
But I think most people would seek to stand up for this country. But what I would say is that there's also things like an economic interest, which is potentially more hard to define.
I agree with you. However, if you're the father or brother or uncle of a serviceman coming back from a war who's been horribly injured, coming back without his legs and arms, like we saw coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, for example, where it could be argued that there were not just political but economic arguments behind those wars. Do you really think that those people felt that economics was worthy of those kind of injured people coming back in body bags. I am not a pacifist, and I believe wholeheartedly in defending our nation and our territories and fighting with our allies and keep commitments.
You do know that was the argument that was used to stop Churchill, don't you? That had sons or brothers or whatever who had lost people or had horrific injuries in the First World War, that with the very best of intentions, wanted to do everything they could to stop Churchill taking on Hitler and do a deal. But sometimes you have to stand up for what is right. Yeah. What exactly has to happen to the Israeli people for Rishi Sunak to say, oh, please don't use restraint, or please use restraint?
In what shape or form is a war in Israel anything to do with us? What would you say has
to happen? Right, come on, we're going to help you guys.
I don't believe that this war is anything to do. It's not for us to be going. You talk Second World War. That was after the Great War, where the most people were killed in a war ever. And what I said just now was I stand by our commitments to our allies, which is exactly what Churchill believed in doing.
I think the stopping of radical Islamism is our consideration.
So we go to war with a whole strain of thought across the whole world.
When one of our closest allies, a country that we helped to set up, it wouldn't exist without
They
us.
bombed us out of there.
Yeah, look, every country's got a history, but we are more closely aligned with our Judeo-Christian values to Israel than we are to the radical Islamists in the Middle East.
I agree with you there.
Well, you don't.
I do. I don't think that because I agree with someone. I mean, I want to send the whole British Army.
I'm not advocating that, but I'm certainly saying the whole thing about not arming them, that was awful. Unfortunately, Lord Cameron.
Okay, look, I want to move this slightly on because I think it was an intention to talk about international terrorism. I understand that emotions run high on the whole Israel and Palestine issue, but you mentioned, Lois, about hate marches and what went on the streets. I personally think that we were all pretty shocked when Armistice Weekend came about and there was a serious attempt to prevent British veterans and servicemen honouring the war dead by people who, on the face of it, appeared to be from one particular community. I don't think that's exclusively true, but that was the impression that was given. What are we going to do about that? First of all, this uncontrolled immigration means that there are people now in this country agree, first of all, with British values, but secondly, with British interests over. Thirdly, with our reluctance to become involved in defending countries that perhaps they might have a historical background with. These people, the point I'm making is, Lois, these people are genuine in their views, but their views are wholly alien to ours.
Well, absolutely. And that's why, George Galloway, MP, his seat, campaigning on absolutely nothing to do with the United Kingdom. And if we as a political party say, oh, we don't comment on that, or we don't want to get involved in that, that's got nothing to do with us. How are we going to take on people wars in other countries to win seats in community where there's disproportionate reflection of communities with people who share the same faith? For example, Gaza and and Islam and all of that. So, yeah, we need to definitely address it 100%.
So, Bill, same point to you.
Right, well, I didn't say we don't comment on it. I said we don't send in troops. But following on from that, the issues with people thinking about Palestine fall under the same bracket for me as BLM marches, as green climate change fanatics, as all of these seem to come into this city of London and seek to disrupt it to the maximum to push their political agenda. They should all be cleared off the streets. When people came to this to protest against lockdowns, they were baton charged. They were imprisoned, and their civil rights were taken from them completely. No one covered it. No one covered it. When it comes to the other people who, with the left-wing agenda of the people running we'll allow them in, and what's more, we'll take a knee to watch them do it. The police need to be clearing these people away. Protest is fine. Comment is fine. But disruptive activity, and certainly on Armistice of all days, they should have been imprisoned immediately, and the police should have taken every action to stop them.
But Bill, look, is the problem here that the police, if the police were to intervene in these marches, they would be defeated, and for the British police to be defeated on the streets of London by Islamists is so unthinkable that they pretend criminality is not taking place.
We can't accept that situation.
No.
We cannot accept that the police will have a no-go zone for anything. Look at what happened in Rochdale and the grooming gangs up north. There was no-go zones for the police. There can be no-go zones. Every part of this country is under the rule of law, and the police must enforce it. And if the people who run the police are incapable of doing that, they should be replaced.
So Lois, I think point to you. Do you believe that British now are so afraid of being defeated on the streets that they're allowing these protests to go ahead? And would UKIP do, if you got, let's do it this way. If you became the British Prime Minister as UKIP leader, what would you do about policing?
Well, the first thing I'd do is abolish the role of the Mayor of London, because the main problem that we've got at the moment is Sadiq Khan is allowing all of these Islamist marches to happen. He's instructing the police not to arrest them.
Yes.
People are holding up placards that wouldn't be out of place in 1930s Germany. That's okay, apparently. So no, I would put policing back in the hands of Parliament and get rid of the whole Mayor of London.
I have to say to you, we had a situation in Finchley and Golders Green where the Member of Parliament, who was perceived to be Jewish, he's not Jewish actually, stood down on the grounds that he was being threatened with death by Islamists. Within weeks, we had Sir Lindsay Hoyle saying that he was changing the British Constitution.
Sadiq Khan's allowing this.
Because members of Parliament were under threat of death. What on earth do we do when there is now a position, and probably the first time since the English Civil War, where there are genuine votes in Parliament being scheduled in order to stop members of Parliament being killed?
Well, didn't you tell me that Sadiq Khan used to have an office in Tottenham or something, but he represented people that were in Guantanamo Bay? He's a dodgy character, and things have gone really, really downhill since he's become the Mayor of London. So yeah, I think Sadiq Khan not being in power is a big one for me.
I think
Lee Anderson was completely right what he said.
I think I can defend Sadiq Khan in the sense that he is what he is. He is somebody I don't believe feels any great loyalty to British history and is much more interested in multiculturalism. That is his values. But Bill, the same point to you about defence of Parliament.
Well, Parliament is sovereign, and our MPs, democratically elected by us, even though on a separate issue, I'd love to see the whole system changed of how they're elected. But those people must not be afraid. They must be defended and protected and allowed to go about their jobs. And anyone who seeks to attack them or intimidate them has to be stopped. However, I also think they need to show a little bit more courage and not start saying how intimidated they feel all the time.
Yes.
Because if you encourage a bully will do it more. Yeah. They need to stand up.
Lois, we've only got a couple of minutes left because we did schedule to finish this at 9 o'clock. But I did want to ask this finally, and it's about children and poverty, because we've seen the gap rich and poor explode in size and skill since the COVID lockdown. And in my own local town, I saw families with 5 laptop computers getting them refurbished, and obviously in poorer areas, young people were using 3 people to a smartphone to try and do their lessons online.
Disgusting.
What are we going to do now to address the fact that work doesn't pay enough, the fact that young people are suffering from genuine lack of opportunity, lack of an opportunity for a properly paid job, lack of opportunity to have a proper debate at university? I feel we're letting down young people. I just wondered what you think we can do about it.
Well, I think it would be a good start to have some proper conservative policies being implemented. So low taxes mean a stronger economy, it means work pay, it means that there's more jobs, all of those kind of things. Encouraging the nuclear family, encouraging women to go to work or not go to work, whatever they want to do, making work pay and helping people is the best way to get children out of poverty, you know, giving people the opportunity to pull themselves up, because actually that's what most people want to do. How can you have a situation, right, as I said, on the other side of my family, where my cousin on my dad's side, it makes no sense whatsoever for her to have the dad of the child living with her and him having a job, you know, because she can get her housing benefit paid, she gets her money, this, that and the other. How can that be a good thing? And we talked earlier, didn't we, about the whole swimming thing. And I know it sounds like a silly thing, but we thought, why can't kids or people applying to join the Navy swim? Because it was the thing that dads did. Take their kids to the swimming pool on a Saturday. And you've so many people that don't have a dad at home, and that's just one thing. So encouraging work, low tax, big growth, nuclear family. Yeah, that's how I get kids out of poverty.
I entirely agree about the low tax issue. I think that we should be taking the lowest earners out of tax entirely, which is one of our policies already. And I think I'd like to see that pushed further. And I also think that we need to go through the education system and root out the Marxists who have infiltrated it from top to bottom and are brainwashing our young people with Marxist ideology, political correctness and green climate change fanaticism.
I have to say to you, Bill, it makes me depressed when I see young people across the world fighting dictatorial governments out of their university student unions and our universities trying to stop debate. Just want to ask you, it's a personal hobby of mine before we finish, support a policy which literally I just made up myself, but I've been advocating it. It is offence, which is conspiracy to prohibit free speech on university campuses, punishable by 5 years in prison.
What a good idea. What a cracking idea. I'm all for that. I think free speech is the very bedrock of our society, and I'm all for that. And what's more, the police should be forced to actually do it and go in there and find the people and make sure they take the punishment. All for it.
I think the problem with the police is that they've all come through the woke education system. And so they're not police again. I keep going banging on about my childhood. The police that you saw on the streets, they look like proper policemen. Now you've got, you know, like 4 foot fat women. I mean, it's embarrassing. You know, the whole thing is embarrassing. They're not going to be that scared, are they? The bad guys, when the, you know, two Tweedledee turn up.
Listen. 4 foot fat women is my only joy on a Saturday night. But look, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming close to the end of this because we did say we'd finish at 9 o'clock. But I just personally, I'm really blown away by both candidates. They've got a difference of approach. And as I said, you will want to reflect on that in your deliberations about who becomes the leader. But I also just want to say to both of you, perhaps now, in my final question, and I'll give you as much time as you need within reason, I just want to ask you this question. I'll give it to you first, Bill. What is it you now want the viewers and the members of UKIP to know about you and your approach to this job, should you get it?
Okay. Well, if I may, I'll speak directly to them. What I want you to know about me is that I believe in the history and heritage of UKIP, but I also believe it's got a great future. I believe it's a party that is for the people, that the people will get a say in. I believe that it's a party that won't be dominated by just one person, but what it will do is reflect in the coming years the growth in concern about issues that we've raised tonight, the World Economic Forum, the COVID vaccine injuries, the lockdowns, the theft of money from the poor and giving it to the rich that we've seen over the last few years. If you want to stand against those things and be part of a people's movement, then I will be honoured, lead and fight shoulder to shoulder with you on the campaign trail, because our future is together as a people's army once again, fighting for freedom and liberty.
And Lois Perry, what do you want the viewers and members to know about your approach?
Okay, I haven't got a background in UKIP, but I believe that actually that this is one of my strengths. I bring something fresh, I bring something new. I've been leading a very successful political campaign group for the last 2.5 years. And I also have been involved in politics since I was 3 years old. It used to be a bit of a party piece when I had dinner, well, not me, but my grandparents had dinner parties. My granddad was, Lois, tell them what you want to do when you're older. And I'd say, I want to work in media and I want to be Prime Minister. And you know what? I think maybe I'm achieving both of those things, hopefully. But I believe in libertarianism. I believe that you need to have low taxes, and that makes work pay, and that encourages people to be independent. And I feel that under my leadership, I can bring money into the party, and that also, you know, people do like me, and I'm on telly quite a lot, and I don't feel that will do the UKIP party any harm whatsoever. So yeah, vote for me.
So just a very quick final comment to say that often in these debates you ask candidates whether they'd be willing to work with each other. But what I've seen as an outsider is that this is a political party that is really more united than it's been in a very long time. I want to thank Ben Walker, the party chairman, for putting on this event. I want to thank the members, the members that have come here tonight. I will say one thing. Apologies, we started slightly late. There are believers of freedom in this room, and they all went for a cigarette. And the bar was open. The bar was open. But I just want to say to UKIP members, please do ensure that you vote in this election. It's an extremely important thing. As you know, the future of Britain was significantly impacted by UKIP's role in the Brexit referendum and getting that through. Somebody's waving at me from the back. Got no idea why that is, but I'm going to sign off.
I've got a question.
Go on.
Oh, okay.
We finished the show.
I'll just let him have his question. Go on.
Right, hope not hate.
Yeah.
Look at the tweets of some of the UK candidates.
Yeah.
Can't get the general election, and they threaten that you'll be smeared in the Guardian.
No, bring it on.
Oh no!
Yeah.
So I just want to be clear. So we had kind of finished the show, and also, given that man is not mic'd up, it may be possible you don't know what he said. What he said is, "What should we do about hope not hate?" Very quickly.
Ignore them.
Okay, Lois.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I think Richard Tice made a massive error of judgment bowing down to these people, because as soon as you bow down, they get a little bit of wind in their sails. And like when you see the Saturday march is increasing week on week, you know, if you don't tackle it, then they will be emboldened. So no, we ignore hope, not hate. We ignore DSMOG. We ignore all of these Marxist, awful publications, and bring it on. Honestly, come on.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what I'm going to say to you is, this isn't the BBC, so there's no auto cue. But let me tell you, presenters on Talk TV and GB News can actually do the job, so they don't need a script to work off. So I can finish the show again by thanking both candidates, thanking you, thanking everybody who was here, including the one heckler at the end.
Always a naughty one, isn't it?
And to say to you, this is an important job. This is an important challenge. UKIP has had good times and bad times, but they've always risen to the challenge. And I look forward to hearing from you in the very